Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank, and I don't know if you've been seeing the new Ducktales cartoon, but it is amazing. I'm not even kidding. It is one of the most fun things I've ever done on a Saturday morning in regards to cartoons. But at the same time, I've kind of been seeing a lot of this is always great. There's not been any sort of problems outside of the episodes being played out of order, which has hurt the characters in one or two ways, namely in Huey, who hasn't been getting anywhere near as much screen time as the other characters, and Scrooge, and Donald to an extent. But Donald recently got an episode with Gladstone. But what I wanted to talk about today was the pros of the series and address some of the issues I had that I think take away from the series in one or two areas. So one thing I do like about the series is how they've reintroduced these characters as characters that are totally different but at the same time feel extremely familiar. And that's one thing this series has been really good at. This doesn't feel like a totally new show. It feels like an old show that's been dusted off a bit and cleaned up in some places. A good example of this would be in the characters, namely Scrooge McDuck, Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Webby. I feel that these four are good personifications of exactly how far we've gone with the characters in a good way. Scrooge, for example, is a nice fusion of his Ducktales counterpart and his comic book counterpart, and he's become much more energetic. And what's really cool is that in the first episode, he does come off like the Don Rosa version, who after periods of inactivity, he's just sort of he's more crankier, he's more cantankerous, and he actually feels a bit sickly. Like he doesn't really feel like he's got the same spark, but by meeting the boys, he's able to reinvigorate himself, and we see exactly what he's capable of. He's not just some stuffy old man. He is very fittingly like the Doctor, and I think those two characters have a lot in common. Scrooge is proven to be the master of whatever element he's in, and I love that because Scrooge McDuck is my all-time favorite character. With Huey, Dewey, and Louie, it is fun to see that we've totally fleshed these characters out. Before, they were totally interchangeable, especially in the comic books, and in the '89 version, we really tried. There was an effort to put them easier to distinguish from one another, not just in the colors, but every now and then we'd see that Louie is the snarky of the two, Dewey's more of an idea guy, and Huey's the leaders. This is almost like Alvin and the Chipmunks, which I think is kind of what they always try to do with those sort of color codings. But now you can easily pick your favorite, and it doesn't really sound like you're making a reach. This seems like a much better version than what we got in Quack Pack, and we don't ever want to go back to Quack Pack. Webby has gotten a complete 180. She's this adventurous, hyperactive ball of energy, and I can't find anyone that doesn't really like her. I think some people feel she's getting a bit too much to do, and you turn around and she's always there, and I think that is sort of ruining her character. Like the oversaturation of a character can truly be the death of that character. But for the most part, all these characters have been really great, and they've been given really good writing, and so you understand them. Like these don't feel just like cartoon characters. For the older fans, these feel like characters that you've known for a while and you've gotten to know them in a different way. And for newer fans, it's just great as well. I mean, I've got people who've never seen DuckTales before because of their age, and they love this series. Now, from a con standpoint, there's only like three issues I have, and I would argue that some of these issues aren't even like actual issues, they're more like personal hang-ups with the show, and they don't really take away from the enjoyment of the series overall, I think. One issue I have is with how we've presented Flintheart Glom Gold. He's kind of the only villain that I feel hasn't been that interesting. Well, at least compared to his other counterparts. I love that he's funny. I love that I can laugh at this Glom Gold. I like that he's bigger, and he looks like he could be a physical threat to Scrooge, but he's not a threat to Scrooge. It's sort of like the worst part about him. For those of you that don't know, Flintheart Glom Gold is Scrooge's, I think, most dangerous threat. Like him, Magica, and for the comic fans, Blackheart Beagle are Scrooge's like greatest enemies. And I don't get that from Glom Gold. I kind of did in the Atlantis episode, where it almost felt like he'd planned everything, like he knew Scrooge was going to be there, he knew who Donald was, and he just sort of had this whole thing planned out. But now he's sort of like, I hate Scrooge. I'm going to do everything I can to destroy Scrooge. And it's just like, do you do anything else? That's it. I mean, Glom Gold in the original, yes, he did often plan to like destroy Scrooge. Like at one point, he framed him for stealing some artwork, which got him locked away in jail. At one point in the comics, in the Ducktales comics, he seized all of Scrooge's assets by taking his accountant, and it was just amazing. Here, it just seems like he's going for the long, overdrawn, overdramatic thing. What we've got here is the Ice King, and the Ice King has become a more dignified character as we've gone on, but I don't really feel that's going to happen here, and it might now be pleasantly surprised. And I just sort of feel like I would enjoy a more menacing Glum Gold as opposed to this sort of, oh yes, I'm evil, evil, yes, and a billionaire. I'm an evil billionaire. Another issue I have is with the tone of the series. I mean, and I mean this in the sense that I don't feel this is an adventure series anymore, so much as it's a character series. It feels like we're more going for Gravity Falls, but Gravity Falls also made a very interesting adventure and slash mystery. I don't feel the adventure aspect has really been matched here. The Duck universe, whether it's the comics or the cartoon from '89, have always had this great sense of adventure to them, and I don't really feel that's happening here. What we're seeing is there's a lot more dialogue and a lot more jokes, and I feel that we're not letting the adventure kind of be the adventure. A good example would be when we went to Atlantis in this version, and when we went to Atlantis in the comics and in the '89 version. There's the three events, the three stories are very different, of course, but in the comic and the '89 version, we did take time to just sort of soak in the environment and the area, so it's more like going to a new place. Where here it's kind of, okay, this is a building, and yeah, it's Atlantis. Let's see the story with Dewey and Scrooge, Donald and Glom Gold, and Louie and Webby, and those were great stories, don't get me wrong. They really made the episode really great, but I didn't care about the adventure. I just feel like that's something that they need to address, and we probably will get better, more adventure-like episodes later on. At least I hope so. And it's honestly kind of it, really. Let's end this with some more prose. I do love all the Easter eggs going on here. Like the first episode alone, you can find a reference to the Treasure of the Golden Suns, the Ducktales movie. The artwork in Scrooge's Mansion is art from Carl Barks, who created Scrooge McDuck, and I do love that. I do love that this series is rewarding past fans, and it's honestly got me to pick up some of my older comics again for Uncle Scrooge, and because of that, at some point we're going to go over the life and times of Scrooge McDuck. Probably won't be this month. It might be. No promises. So I'm going to end this here. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. Tune in next time, where we'll see what we're going to do next time. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.